The Hey Blue Umpire podcast for umpires by an umpire for this January the 18th, 2023 is brought to you by MahlerBrothers.com. Go to MahlerBros.com today for all your golf attire umpires. Get out there, save yourself 10% with promo code 1420 bros BROS. Get yourself some nice polo shirts to go to the field and looking good this season, or for your golf game. Go out there, you look good, you feel good, you play good, or you umpire good. Anyways, MahlerBrothers.com, a new sponsor of the 1420 group of shows. Thank you very much, guys. Make sure you guys support them out there. Anyways, we'll get on with the Hey Blue podcast for this January the 18th, 2023. Admittedly, people who know me, people who work with me, people who don't even work with me, they know I'm an umpire dork through and through. There's no getting around that. A proud umpire dork, to say the least, but an umpire dork to nonetheless. More admittedly, actually, I'm more of a mechanics dork. I still catch myself in the mirror once in a while, looking at my out call, trying different calls, different strikes, different times, different this and that. Those of you who umpire who been doing it for a long time, most of you are probably in the same boat, and you're umpire dorks as well. And it takes us umpire dorks to keep the game rolling throughout North America or throughout the world, wherever it may be. It's us guys that enjoy the game for its goofy, quirky ways, I guess, a way of putting it, and getting out there and umpiring the game that we love, and being a part of it on a nightly basis, no matter what level you do it. But the one thing I like about one of the things I like about umpiring is getting out there and making that crisp call, having your mechanics that are consistent. Everybody knows, and everybody in the building knows what your call is. Going out there with confidence, making it look okay. Because half the times, if you look good and you're confident doing it, I didn't say, and if you're confident and assertive, not aggressive. We go over that a lot at the Southern Alberta Umpire Association. But if you're assertive with your call and you're confident with your call, that'll get you through a lot of troubles. And that's one thing about having proper mechanics, consistent mechanics, where everybody knows, everybody in the building knows what the call is. That can help you through a lot of troubles, no matter what level you're at. The old Steve ball can get you. That happens. It's a thing. We actually had a couple of guys talking about that last weekend when we us older guys took some pitches last weekend for the PBA. Thank you once again very much, Todd Hubka and Ryan McDonald, the PBA, for allowing us umpires to go out there and see some pitches earlier in the season that we normally wouldn't get to see. But that got brought up, that the Steve ball thing and the mechanics don't look good. If you come up confident with your call and they are consistent, then you'll get yourself out of a lot of problems. No matter how many people are in the building, if there's 10 parents behind you, or if there's 10,000 people, getting the call right is obviously the most important, but making sure you look like you know what you're doing, and you're getting your calls, you have your mechanics crisp, clean, and there's no guessing what the call is supposed to be. A lot of times, guys, they call a guy safe, and all of a sudden their hands, because they get a little excited, lower levels, they're getting a little excited with their safe, and they're just throwing their hands up in the air, and it looks like they're calling timeout. And then you get a guy, another thing, they're pointing to first base on a check swing, and they're using the wrong hand, and all of a sudden it looks like it's a strike call. The guy in the 45th row at Yankee Stadium, he doesn't know the difference. Who's 14 or 15 Bud Lights deep, he may not know the difference what's going on. So having the proper mechanics and getting out there and working on those on a daily basis is very important to a young umpire, to an older umpire. There's guys who have not the best mechanics at times, and it gets them in trouble because you get people guessing what the call may be. And if it doesn't look good, and it looks like you're kind of second guessing it, even though you might be 100% right, but sometimes when you're making that call, it might not look like you are very confident with your call. And having the proper mechanics and doing things properly. Not that I'm 100% right all the time, but I do take some pride in my mechanics when I'm out there. There are things that I do probably showboat a little bit. I guess we all do a little bit when it comes down to it on a call, but we all practice our bangers at first base, or our stolen base at second, getting those right, or you have a safe at home plate, or whatever it may be. But having that call consistent, so everybody in the building knows what the call is going to be, is very important. And you're not having 10,000, or like I said, or 10 parents second guessing what your call is, because you've made the call. You've made it 100 times that game already. You've made that adjustment to whatever's got to happen. And it's very important to have those things look good and confident and assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. Like, you're not going out and punching a kid out at second base right in his face and the whole bit when he's trying to steal second base and the like. But you just got to make sure that when you are out there doing it properly, that it looks better than average. I guess is one way of doing it. We all have our own styles. We all have our own ways of doing things, but just making sure that first off, getting the call right is obviously the most important. Making sure your timing is good, and then giving yourself a time to shine. When you have that, everybody's looking at you. You give yourself the proper timing, and you make that call because everybody's waiting for you to make that call. Something as simple as having it that out, the simple using a hammer. It's very important. One thing that I still do to this day is I look in the mirror. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I'm a dork and everything else. Like I said, admittedly, I'm an umpire dork. But going in there, having your mirror, making sure that the things look okay. At the Southern Alberta Umpire Association, we try to teach kids the proper way of doing things, making sure it looks right, and they're doing things the proper way. The old hammer, making sure that they're doing it right. One thing that makes me laugh. We had this one kid a few weeks back. Guy started calling him Travolta because he was doing the staying alive thing. He was calling guys out, and he was basically just pointing to the sky with his hand. So I started calling him Travolta from Staying Alive, and he finally got it about using a hammer. And I said, "Have you ever used a hammer in your life?" And I actually don't think that he did, because he was a younger kid, but he was trying and he was giving it his all out there. So he was having a good time, and he quite liked it. But you could tell that he hadn't used a hammer before, so he was doing things a little bit differently, and that's why I started calling him Travolta. And just a simple teaching of why you need to do things like this, and why you need to make your calls a certain way. So like I said, there's not any guessing of what the call might be, because there is some confusion. There's not a whole bunch of hand signals that we have, but to make sure that the hand signals that we do use are always the same, and they always are crisp and clean, and you're not having a situation where people are guessing that, like, Travolta's call could have been like the out that he had could very easily have been an infield fly. That's how high his hand was, and he was doing that. We also teach at our clinic the reasons why you have to point with your left hand to get a check swing at either first or third or wherever your partner may be, because the person in the 50th row at Yankee Stadium, they might see that right hand come up. If you're not doing a hammer call, if you do a point like I do, then they might think that that's a call at first base. We had that situation a couple of years back with Matt Ben. He was on the show. Love you, Matt. And he had that little situation where he pointed to me with his wrong hand. We got the call right, so it wasn't a big deal. We got a few questions afterwards about that call. Did you call that a strike? And how can you check a strike when you're not supposed to check the strike and the like? So having your mechanics proper, having them crisp, having them clean is very important. So you can control the stuff you can control. And by doing things like that, like I said, there's zero question as to what you're doing. Come up assertive, come up confident, come up looking good while you're doing it. Practice things in the mirror, kids, or people who are a little bit older. As like here in Canada, we're getting into the season. We're starting to do a few more things, and having your consistent mechanics is so important. Last weekend we were doing some cage works. We were trying to do some different things. I was trying to do some different things. Actually, we'll talk about that in a second too. But we just try to get guys doing the same thing over and over and over again, because it not only helps your timing, but it just looks like it's right. And when it looks right, it usually is. You'll get a lot less arguments and a lot less people pestering you when you think that, or when it looks proper. And that's just how things are. Like with your uniform, the whole bit. If you go out there looking like a schlub and acting like a schlub, you'll get treated like a schlub. But if you go out there looking good, feeling good, looking assertive, looking confident, you'll keep yourself out of a lot of trouble. It's the old smoke and mirrors thing that we talked about a few weeks back on the Hey Blue podcast. So there's just little things that you got to teach, and you have to tell young cadets, like John Galante from the Tri-State Umpire Association said, you teach the cadets the proper way of doing things over and over and over again, and the repetitiveness of it just becomes second nature. We had one kid 2 weeks ago at our clinic, 14, 15 years old. I'm not exactly sure how much umpiring he did, but his mechanics were surprisingly fantastic. Like he was crisp with his time call, he was crisp with his out call, he did the hammer right, he's out, he was doing everything exactly like we taught him. Maybe he's just a sponge, maybe he does it, maybe he practices at home, I don't know, but he was new to our clinic, and it was good to have a young cadet out there learning how to do things properly. And then actually he was showing some other kids how to do things properly because he was noticing that there were some guys doing things that were a little bit not right. You don't want to always say wrong. You don't want to be negative, but if they're just not right is a better way of putting it. So having all your calls the right way is so important, making sure that you're doing things the right way. And if you see somebody doing something a little bit wrong, if they're pointing with the wrong hand, or we still get kids at our clinic, if they're left-handed, they don't seem to want to forget that they're left-handed. They keep using their left hand for all their calls, right? And it's just it's one of those things that he says, well, that's dumb. I said, well, it's not dumb. It's just the way it is. And here's why, and here's the reasons, everything else, right? So it's just one of those things that you have to try to pound into people's heads that when they do make a call, to make sure that it's done the proper way, because it'll get a young umpire out of trouble, and it'll help them in the long run, because that's what we try to do here in Southern Alberta. And I'm sure it's right across Canada, United States, where the older guys who might also have some bad habits, but they should be able to get out of those habits a little bit and learn things to do it the right way, and then knowing that they're doing it the right way, and knowing that they look good, and that they feel more confident, and you become an umpire dork. Like if you're listening to this, you're probably an umpire dork as well, because that's what umpire dorks seem to do. And I'm not being derogatory by calling anybody an umpire dork or mechanics dork, because I don't want to say I'm the king of them, because I'm sure there's people who are way worse than me. I remember at the Jim Evans School back in '97, we actually, and that's probably the same way all the time, though. There were so many guys who it's all you did was look in the mirror all day and practice your mechanics and practice this and practice and make sure your head height and that the tape was on the mirror and the tape was on the ground, and you're always doing your out calls and your safe calls and everything else, and the point. And the point was a big one. Hey, how aggressive you looked with your point and everything else. Jim Reynolds, who just retired, he had the best point. I remember this the way he did it, and it was a trigger with a gun, and just the way it came out, it was pretty solid. I tried to emulate that when I got done umpire school back in '97. I still try it to this day. But the certain mechanics that you try, but the one rule we had when we went to Hooters all the time in Daytona Beach, or not Daytona Beach, in yeah. No, where it does. I can't remember where it was. It's just so long ago. Kissimmee, Florida is where it was. I don't know why I played hockey in Daytona. That's why. In Kissimmee, Florida, we went to Hooters all the time, or to where Gators Pub was another one we stopped in a lot and had some beers there. But we had the no mechanics rule when we're out and about having beers. And if you started doing mechanics at the bar and looking like an umpire dork, you had to buy a round of beers. And beers were a lot cheaper back then, so you didn't much mind doing it. So it was one of those things that you didn't mind buying beers. But now you go out and buy around a few jugs of beer. It costs you $120 probably, the way things go nowadays. But it's a little bit different back in Kissimmee. It would cost you $7 a jug, I think, or whatever it was back then. And they aren't pitchers of beer, because pitchers throw baseballs. You buy jugs of beer, right? That was one of the other things we had at umpire school, that a few guys that still listen to this show and I'm in contact with today still we laugh about that kind of stuff. But anyways, make sure, people, when you're out there doing things, and make sure when you're teaching kids, or if you're going out just getting things going again for your season. A lot of people's season go year round. Most of us, they don't, because the colder wet weather climates. Get your mechanics down right. Sit in front of the mirror for a few hours a week and just practice things, making sure that everything is done properly. Make sure that you're consistent with what you do. Like I said, so there's no guessing as to what your call might be. There's no guessing yourself, and it becomes muscle memory that this is the exact same thing every time, because consistency is one of the keys to being a good umpire. And that's not just making your calls, being in the proper position, but it's also how you make your calls. And like I said, then there's no guessing from coaches and parents or anybody, because that's usually who ends up giving us the most grief overall when it comes to the great game of umpiring. Go out there, be an umpire dork. Tell your wife that the Hey Blue podcast said you had to do it for a couple hours a week. Sit in front of the mirror. Maybe she can join you, and she can watch and see if things look right or not. Use your phone to record it, to see what it looks like, the whole bit, because that doesn't hurt. Put your uniform on, be an umpire. Maybe don't do that. That's pushing a little bit. Anyways, the Hey Blue Umpire podcast and Umpires podcast. For umpires, by an umpires, once again brought to you by MaulerBrothers.com. That's MaulerBros.com. Get yourself some golf shirts, golf attire. They got all kinds of different stuff on there, and save yourself 10% on your purchases. Go out, make sure you look good for the upcoming season. When you go to the ballpark, like I said, try to look good, because if you look good, people won't think you're a schlub. Go to the field looking good, leave the field looking good. You look professional, you act professional. And that's part of the smoke and mirrors that we talk about here in the Hey Blue podcast. Oh, once again, I'd like to thank Blaze LeVay for joining me last week on the Hey Blue podcast. Great time talking to Blaze. We've been back and forth in the text messages since then. We discussing some different things, and I had a lot of good feedback about the show with Blaze. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, make sure you tune into that one. They're on our long list of shows on the 1420 group of shows. Anyways, the Hey Blue podcast brought to you by Mauler Brothers, MaulerBrothers.com. Use promo code 1420BRO.
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.